Welcome back. Time now for a look at business. Matthew's here. Greece, as we've been hearing, Matthew, has some more work to do on its plans.
That's right. We were just looking there at the fact that the government has got to go and make some more cuts in its budget, because the other part of this whole deal is the agreement with the private bondholders. There's a plan to cut 70% off the value of the bonds that they hold. That would reduce the big debt pile that Greece holds of 350 billion euros by about 100 billion euros. So it's crucial that it gets done. Where is it? Well, the EU's Economic and Monetary Affairs Commissioner Olli Rehn, a man who's not used to exaggerating, has said that the deal is practically finalised. I think that sounds like it's in pretty good territory.
Why such a rush to get all this done?
Yes, there's a rush because we keep talking about this date of the 20th of March, when 14.5 billion euros of debt repayment becomes due. Now, that's quite a way off, but actually quite a lot of things need to happen before we get there. Firstly, the deal that's done with these private bondholders needs to be made available to all private bondholders, and they will need to get agreements, sometimes board approval, that kind of thing. So time's needed for that. Greece is also going to need to put some legislation in place for what's called these collective action clauses. A bit technical, but that basically means any bondholders who don't sign up to the deal can be forced to do so through legislation. And finally, some countries, like Germany, for example, need to get parliamentary approval of any deal that's going to be done over the next few days. So all of this takes time before that money can be released. Now, while Europe's finance ministers have sent the Greek government back to make some more budget cuts, there's still concerns over the true state of the Greek economy. How bad are things really? Kate Moody has the story.
All about the numbers as Greece tries to secure the next round of its international bailout. 130 billion euros is the sum at stake. 14.5 billion euros is the amount the government needs to pay bondholders on March 20th. And 325 million euros is the amount of additional savings that the so-called Troika of the European Commission, European Central Bank and International Monetary Fund wants Greece to find by next week. That would include further cuts to the federal budget, a 22% reduction in the minimum wage, and lower public pensions. Fresh data paint a gloomy picture of the Greek economy. The unemployment rate rose to a record 20.9% in November, industrial production declined 11.3% in December, and the GDP is expected to contract between 4 and 5% in 2012, the fifth straight year of recession. Lawmakers know the stakes are high.
We are decided to move on because the alternative, an outright bankruptcy, would have been much worse for the people, and it would have created big problems for the Eurozone as well. And we have to do all the difficult structural changes to achieve that. But we also need time and support from the European Union.
As officials continue their wrangling, the Greek public is taking to the streets in protest. Unions have called a 48-hour strike in opposition to the austerity measures.
Tell us then, Matthew, how all this has been affecting the markets.
Yes, this Greek news is not really very welcome in the markets. The Asian markets, if we take a look at those, they've been slipping overnight. All slipped down into the red there. And some news in from China as well about its trade situation. Exports fell about 0.5% in January. In fact, it's been the trade has had the biggest decline since the 2008 crisis, but imports fell more, so the surplus still widened last month. But that's raising fears about how things are going to go in the Chinese economy. Over in the US, well, those markets closed when the news still looked a bit more positive in Greece. So those are all finishing up in the green. US markets still having a pretty good run this year.
We're going to have a look now at some of the rest of the day's business stories. 5 big US banks will be forced to pay compensation after an investigation found that they behaved unfairly when foreclosing the homes of thousands of borrowers. They will now be forced to pay $750,000 borrowers, with each receiving around $2,000. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citigroup and Ally Financial were all slapped with the fines.
And the US drinks and snacks company PepsiCo has announced it's cutting around 9,000 jobs worldwide. The news came despite better than expected fourth quarter profits. The job cuts are part of an effort to reduce costs by $3 billion over the next 3 years. The company also said it will focus on its core brands and boost marketing spend by up to $600 million.
Now, there's been a lot of focus, of course, Matthew, over the last month or so on southern Europe and the countries in the southern fringe. You've been having a look at some interesting developments in the north of Europe, though.
Yes, now this is quite interesting. This is all about, this is called the Northern Forum. Prime ministers from Nordic, Baltic countries and also the UK, they invited David Cameron in as well, been getting together to talk about things. Now, I think this is interesting because while we're looking at all of the problems going on in the south of Europe, these countries have been really focusing on jobs, growth and the future. In particular, they were looking, for example, at how to get more older people into the workforce, how to get more women into the workforce as well. They've been talking about things like greater flexibility in when you can retire. Norway has a system where you can basically choose when you want to retire, and you get a higher pension payout if you decide to go later. So it's interesting to just start to see there these sort of differences emerging between the north part of Europe, who are really focusing on that and have better growth prospects, and the south, which, as we've seen from the news today, not so good. Let's move on to talk about France, though. French car maker Renault has opened a giant factory in Morocco to build low-cost cars. But the news has sparked controversy in the automaker's home country.
The opening of Renault's massive new factory in Tangiers was important enough for King Mohammed VI himself to perform the formalities. He was accompanied by Renault CEO Carlos Ghosn.
It's a great day for us because the Tangiers factory is the first factory to be built by Renault in the 21st century.
The factory has been built with a record investment of over €1 billion. It's expected to produce 170,000 cars in 2012, climbing to 400,000 next year, once a second production line is switched on. 85% of the production is destined for export, primarily to Europe. Renault workers in France are concerned.
Why go abroad to make low-cost cars when there are a lot of people here who need low-priced cars too?
If this goes on, there'll be no factories in France.
Production costs in Morocco will be significantly lower.
A Renault worker in France earns at least €1,100 a month. In Morocco, it's €250. How are you supposed to compete with those conditions?
The first vehicle to roll off the line in Morocco will be the Dacia Logi MPV. It has a sticker price of just €12,000, half as much as Renault's French-built MPVs, though the carmaker says it's aimed at a different market. One consolation for French workers, some of the parts for the Tangiers-built cars will be manufactured in France.
Well, that brings us to the end of business. Matthew, thanks very much. We'll be hearing from you again later on in just a couple of minutes. All the very latest international headlines. Do stay with us.
year in France, pet owners spend €3 billion on food, health and the general well-being of their animals. And thanks to medical progress, our domestic friends are living much longer than before. This week we're taking a look at the very best care on offer, what your money and love can buy.
Don't miss Health today, 4:40 p.m. Paris time on France 24.
Watch France 24 live and free on your mobile phone. Anywhere in the world, on almost any cell phone, whatever your provider. Watch France 24 live and in 3 languages. France 24 on your mobile phone. Just visit our website, france24.com, and click on mobile. Select your phone brand, enter your phone number, and you'll receive a free SMS telling you how to install our player. You can watch France 24 live and get the latest world news for free on your mobile.
France 24 presents The Observers. Get a different view of the news. Yours. Photos, videos, and on-the-spot eyewitness accounts verified by our journalists and published on our website.
Welcome to the France 24 Observer.
The Observers. It's also on TV, with webcam reports from our observers around the world. The Observers, an interactive network of some 5,000 people. The Observers. It's them, it's him, it's her, and you can be part of it. Find out how at observers.france24.com. You too can be our eyes across the globe.